When I tell y'all Aries was my visual interpretation for how far we have come from the premise of this show, Will Packer, what the hell is this ratchet mess you got us watching? Y'all, let's get into this reunion of Ready to Love. Hey y'all, support this channel by smashing that like button. Your likes not only make my day, but they also tell YouTube that you also enjoy this content. Also, don't forget to hit the notification button. That way you can be alerted as soon as I drop a new episode. Oh, yes, y'all. It is finally over. So it is now the reunion, at least part one, of Ready to Love season 8, Dallas, Texas, y'all. We are done. This season has taken us through, and we have been through the peaks and the valleys. You understand me? We have made it out of the wilderness, and we are at the end, and we deserve this moment because this season is ending. Uh, this season has been just the furthest interpretation against whatever this show initially started out with, in my opinion. It's not the worst season, y'all, to me, but it definitely was not something that lived up to the actual premise of this show. So we back in this furniture warehouse per usual, with this tight IKEA level furniture that doesn't fit the set ever. Tommy is fitting to get into these people's business, break down the season for us, and make sure that we see his Louboutin sneakers. Now, briefly, y'all, let's get into these fashion looks because it was not giving. Now, we're going left side, right side this thing, y'all. And you know how I feel about Dallas season. You know, if you've been watching my reviews, I actually feel like Dallas, especially in the ladies' lounge and the men's lounge, was the best dressed season, in my opinion, of the people on Ready to Love. I never feel like, no matter how you felt about any individual person, that they failed when it came to throwing us the fashions. But all of a sudden, it's like they gave up in the reunion. We going left side, right side this thing. And so we're going to hit the left side, which I'm going to say is Maurier's side of the situation. And when I tell you, where the hell was everybody going? Everybody was not dressed for the same event or the same place. It was all over. You got prom happening on one end. You got an insurance salesman convention happening on another. Girl, you got a red carpet possibly happening on another end. You got late for work. I didn't know what was happening with these clothes. You know, I could not understand if production had talked to them. Did they let them know that today was the actual reunion? Everybody was just all over the place. And just from a visual interpretation standpoint, why is Marvin me up in this top left row when I tell you he was already exhausted and I was already over it when we saw this season? We gonna get into Tequila and them feathers, honey, but they was sticking up above Jessica's head like a headdress. I did not know what was happening. Marie sitting here looking like the inside of a Crown Royal bag, and this tux that was green pants. I didn't know what was happening. It was like, where did we decide our color stories? You know, Phil is dressed like he could be an insurance salesman at a golf course. Marvin looked like he just got off of work. I'm sorry, he just got off of work, and I didn't know what was going on. Sierra felt like she just was popping in, popping out, and this was like the third thing on her list to do today. And they here for 8 hours. I feel like in this moment, especially on this side, I feel like Jessica and Lee were the only ones that gave that this was some sort of reunion. Although they had Lee sit in that white plastic chair again from IKEA. I need the set and the clothes to match the situation. But one thing we was going to see, Tommy, is that leg sticking out with that Louboutin sneaker on, honey. Now, I would say on the right side of things, everybody else was doing, actually nice. They seemed like they were headed to a reunion. I just don't know who made the phone calls. What was the phone tree situation? I feel like some people got the message and some people did not get the message. But the right side actually did pull it out, y'all. I thought everybody on this side looked pretty good for the most part. Um, they clearly were all coming to the same function, which was really important. But they still sit on that dingy couch. And, Lee Ann up in the pink, y'all, looked amazing. I forgot she was on this show. I hope somebody fed Lee Ann because, she was smorgasbording it down during the mixer. So I hope she got a meal in before she came. But sis looked wonderful. The skin was glowing. Everybody's popping on this side. Chris got his little cornrows and braids going. It was really nice to see. Even somebody managed to get Habibi in a thrift store brocade jacket. Everybody knew the assignment on the right side, y'all. The only thing I wasn't feeling somewhat was I didn't love Kat's outfit completely. I thought her hair was beautiful, or the makeup was gorgeous. I understand like a lot of women got flack about the makeup. I mean, it's TV lights. They're there for 8 hours. A lot of times these women do their own makeup. It's not a normally a person on the set to do makeup unless the person has bought them, from what we've been told from previous contestants. So I didn't understand a lot of the flack that the women were getting about their makeup, because if you've ever seen television or even worked behind television or broadcast, you know that, the lights above are very heavy, they're very harsh, and they have different gels on the light sometimes. So it could just make your makeup look different or off. I just didn't love that Cat's dress was so open. And this is just my personal opinion. I feel like whenever you wear a dress where you have like, a split, and you also have like a bodice, and you also have an open part, I feel like you need to pick one or the other to make the dress really stand out. I feel like the more spots where you have like some big reveal where your shoulders out, or your breasts are out, or your leg is out, it takes away from that part of the dress in a way, and it just makes it look like a piece of fabric wrapped around your body. And then with the wraparound sandals, it was a lot. I love her boho locks though, and again, like I said, everybody on this side really, really killed. So of course, Tommy gets into breaking down the season and how everybody just shows up for love and everything is wonderful, and we're all meeting strangers and everybody's there with the promise of leaving with somebody. And of course, we run through that whole reel of all the fun that they've had, all the good times that they've gone through, all the unique ways and patterns. Child, it was the same old, same old. So we get to the curveballs for the season. And I actually have to say that I really enjoyed Tommy's curveballs this season. They very much were reminiscent of the very earliest seasons of Ready to Love. If you really saw season like 1 and 2, when they would throw curveballs in, and they'd be like, okay, there'd be somebody, that would come in maybe a 2 or 3 episodes afterwards and sort of shake it up. And it wasn't as much as it was. And I think we were in Miami, those were ridiculous. I don't know what was happening. Every week it was something different. Like, oh, you're gonna go to a haunted house and you're gonna meet a man under the tree. Like, it was ridiculous how many people they were throwing in DC and Miami. So it was nice to go back to just, hey, we're gonna introduce a new man and a new woman, not 18 people, and y'all gonna have to make a decision from that, but it could shake up the tree. So the curveballs this season were Chris 2.0, and Chris with the cornrows, you know what I'm saying? Teacher Chris, Chris that got let go, and Kat, who was on the women's side of things. And I thought it was really a nice little shakeup. It wasn't too crazy. They came in at like episode 3 or something. And this is what didn't make sense for me on the segment itself. They also highlighted Sierra. Our girl Sierra probably has been my favorite person from this season of Ready to Love. She was a complete hoot, and absolutely something that we needed for comic relief. I think sis came in, understood the assignment, and it's been clear if you've ever seen like any of her stuff online. She literally had no problem just being herself, and that authenticity and just her like pure ball of fun energy allowed this season to have some nicer spots where it kind of got rough a little bit. Tommy shows the season's wild cards and everybody being introduced. He asked Chris how he felt about being a curveball. And Chris, although attractive, gives the most boring answers on earth. I know he has a Southern drawl, y'all, and I get it. He has this whole Southern gentleman thing going on, but Chris speaks like an interviewer. And his response was so like PR, I enjoyed being on the show, Tommy. It was a lot. So he said he tried to handle it the best way he could. Sir, you were on a dating show for a couple of weeks. I don't know what you thought this was. It wasn't surgery. But, he was looking good in them cornrows and that tux. And I used to be anti-men in braids, but I honestly have to say, especially with formal wear, but Chris actually pulled it off very well. So, I'm changed. He also talked to Kat, who was the curveball on the men's side of things. And like I said, I love Kat's boho hair. I don't know what was going on with that dress and them sandals, but I absolutely enjoyed her energy as well to a certain degree, until I realized she was very similar to Tequila and Janelle, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And I felt like, she was a nice visual curveball. So did the men. She basically went on to say she didn't know what was going to happen. Now, here's the thing that they showed and like different stuff that went on the season. When I talk about the fact that I feel like Kat was similar to Janelle and Tequila, what I mean is that initially she came off cool, but then over time, and if you really watch the show and not just like, fall into who you like and don't like, you'll actually see that she's very messy too. She continues to do so in this reunion in the back end the most. But I noticed that she can come across very messy. Like she tries to come off like likable, like a girl's girl. And we gotta stop with this girl's girl energy. I'm mad they gave y'all therapy words for real. And I'm mad they gave y'all like these visual words of like male identified and girl's girl, because honestly, most people aren't any of those things, one or the other extreme. It really is something that comes up in a lot of people in different ways. And for me, that came up with Kat. But they show Kat's, transition in the show. They show her, meeting with all the different men and them getting to know her. And they also show her date with Maria. As we know, Maria had a love triangle. And when I say love triangle, I mean there was nobody available left. And he had it between Jessica and Kat. And they discuss how Kat felt about that. And they show an unseen clip of Kat and Marie sitting down, and really they show the scene where Marie is telling Kat that he doesn't think that they're going to make it like she cared. And she eventually starts crying, but then we realize she's saying she crying because her dog was in the ER all night and she was with him. And then Marie's like, can you get them some tissue? I told y'all these people wasn't a thing for each other. I don't care what Aquanetta said. They was never going to be a thing. Maria does not make enough money for Kat. And honestly, they just were not a match at all. I will say I was sad to hear about her dog. I know a lot of people feel like their pets are their family. So it's got to be troubling when you think something could be happening to your pet. And she said she was happy that the pet was alive. But throughout this season, y'all, I honestly feel like Kat gave unserious vibes. And I never felt at any real point that she had made any serious connections with anyone. Even when she sat down with Phil and Herbert that day for that date with her best friend Allie, and they were Alley Cat. I feel like it still was just a situation where they just weren't her speed. I think she's looking for a softer life than a lot of these men are willing to, provide or even just be interested in that way of life specifically. And I just didn't understand that. So this dynamic here was just also so weird to me. I also felt like it was really, really awkward the way that they kept emphasizing the fact that if Kat had been there longer, somehow she would have, mesmerized these men. I feel like she was very much a new toy. When she came in, she was shiny and bright. But once she was there for a little while, nobody really connected to her. And ultimately, she wasn't really in anybody's top. The more and more men, there was nobody pulling her away from Quentin. He was at pickleball with her for the entire time. And when I tell you, he talked to her like a friend. And even at the cabin, before Janelle came out there, he was barely interested and really focused on that chicken. We have to stop making it seem like they came in months later. They shoot Ready to Love for like 4 to 6 weeks. Kat and them came in like the third episode, probably week 3 or so. It wasn't that long that these other people knew each other before you came in. And let me say something. We have had way too many seasons of this show where people come in at the last minute and still tend to make an impact. Cynthia in Miami was a curveball, and Mark Anthony, and they both left with people. So now whether or not it worked out, but either way, they both made an impact. So you can come in week 3 and still make an impact. It's not the situation where you're not going to have a connection because you started so late. These men were never going to be interested in that situation because I just don't think that they saw her in that way. When I tell y'all Red came in with a bag to fight, when I tell you if there's anybody who holds on to a grudge tighter, it ain't nobody but Red. So Red's there. They now go to Unique and Red over their segment. And when I tell you he had the leftovers of Marie's jacket, it was very much given Fly Aladdin Carpin. And Red and Unique, and we are going through the drama of the thought job, honey. Who knew that this was going to travel all the way to the reunion? Why was this language just the constant berater of us over episode after episode after episode until Red left the set? I do not understand. Now, I've said this, and I said this in my reviews prior to this reunion. I do think that the way Unique approached him regarding the thought job thing was just ridiculous. I feel like, when you first meet somebody, they're a complete stranger to you. This was the mixer disrespecting somebody's job or calling it a thought job or saying like it attracts thoughts or whatever. It was just so stupid. You know what I'm saying? You're a grown woman. You wouldn't talk to a man that you meet that way, and anything you're going to ask them questions. And when they actually showed the footage back, I thought it was interesting that she didn't ask him other questions about his dynamic, meaning like, I think he said something about, being divorced. He also talked about how his job or his work, people don't assume that you would be a provider in that capacity. And I think more so because people don't think DJs make a lot of money, which depending on how you do it and how often you do it, and if you have your own company, you absolutely can. And I think he also did something else. So I thought the provider thing was really something that she could have touched on, or specifically why he was divorced, or his parenting. I mean, as far as like his kids and the dynamic, he has so many other things going on in that first conversation. And she really missed out on that by disrespecting his job, especially because they do like the same thing. I don't know. It was just really weird. So I just feel like one of the things that I understood about Red's frustration is the fact that she even went there with it. But when I tell you Red needed to let this go, sir, it was a done deal. The lady done apologized at the table. You didn't accept her apology, and you still kept this going. And ain't nobody buying them damn t-shirts. And when I tell y'all, Unique came in with her own brand of wax sauce. I mean, girl, where were we going with this entire story? Also, where were we going with that beauty supply pack hair? When I tell y'all, Unique had me rolling with this ponytail. It was just like the part mixed with the hair. It gave beauty supply pack hair. You know how like it looked like when you put a little gel or pomade on the hair. And when it's beauty supply hair, you know it's not that raw hair, nothing like that. So it looks kind of a little shiny and phony. Why her hair like a patent leather shoe? I don't care which way she turned in this camera, it was always giving boat on shine, honey. I didn't know what was going on. It was giving shoe polish. Anyway, Unique starts to get into this dynamic about how she tried to apologize to Red with the thought job. She then goes on to explain the definition of a thought job, which was better when it was clarified. But girl, you should have explained it that night, because he was still feeling some sort of way over time. She did apologize to him during this moment, so I feel like he was definitely dragging it. But the thing that was weird with me, and what we all kind of were like thrown aback, is that she then goes on to make it seem as if Red still tried to connect with her after the show. And come to find out, he really just wanted to have a side conversation with her because they started to go through it when they were at the ranch arguing. So she proceeds to say that, Red called her phone a bunch of times. And he's like, I didn't call your phone a bunch of times. I only called your phone once, and I left you a text message. She then co-signs the same thing she said was the opposite a minute later. So then she goes, well, do you want me to check into the DMs? Y'all, I hate when somebody is about to tell a story that they feel like is going to be juicy and it turned out to be whack as hell. And that's exactly what this story was with Unique. So then she goes on to say that Red dropped a DM to her and that she's going to show it. Does he want to show it? He's like, what did I say in the DM? And she said, can we talk offline? And he said, like, how is that scandalous? When I tell you, I wanted to choke her just because, girl, what is this? You got us all hyped up for this juicy story. We think this man hitting you up, trying to get with you after this show. He done said some things to you that's completely, uncomfortable, and you're about to show it on the screen. And he just was saying, can we talk on the side? So he said, I just said the same thing. Where is this story going? When I tell you, I was absolutely quitting in this moment. If you're not going to spill some tea, shut the hell up about this, because you are annoying us. So everybody else is starting to chime in, because even Tommy getting frustrated. And then she proceeds to say that she knew some things about him offline because she has friends in other areas and places that know him and her, and that they, she's heard of some things third party wise. Then she proceeds to say something about his parenting. Now, I thought that this was really inappropriate and low. I completely agree, because Janelle chimed in. They were on the couch because, they just throw random people on the couch for segments that have nothing to do with them. And Janelle basically says, now, wait a minute, whether or not, we all get along in the show, whatever, it is inappropriate to bring up somebody's kids or their exes when those people are not here to defend themselves. They're innocent, especially the children. Tommy totally agreed. I totally agreed. Unique failed more in this conversation. It was dumb, and I wasted our time with this back and forth exchange. It was as boring as these two were on the show. I will say this is the best dress that I have seen Unique, because she dressed horribly throughout this entire season. While I did love most of the women's outfits, I would say 90%, Unique every day looked like a grab bag from Rainbow. And I never understood why we were dealing with that situation. So I just appreciate that they stepped out and let us know that, honestly, if you got any rumors and you don't really reveal exactly what it is, just don't bring it up, especially when it has to do with people's kids, because divorce can be very ugly and we don't always really know what be going on with folks. But when I tell you this segment was boring as hell because she dropped no tea, I went ahead and placed my grocery order on Walmart for pickup. So coming back from the break, we see this weird drunk flirtation between Kira and Red. When I tell you, I almost threw up in my mouth. So now we are back with Pastor Morier and First Lady Jessica. Let the church say yes. Y'all know how I feel about these two and this dry interpretation of a situationship that they got going on. Now, y'all know how I feel about Jessica and Morier specifically. I feel like in Otherworth and in Otherworld, Alternative World, we're going to get into Alternative World couple in a minute. But this real world situation was just, we don't believe it. We don't believe you need more people. When I tell you, Jessica looked beautiful. I loved the red dress. It was better than that dress on the bridge. But I, again, could not understand why Jessica keep doing these updos. Honey, when I give you the updos are giving a sense of confusion by your hairstylist. It's never really quite laid and pinned in right. I don't understand it. It's just, it'd be a combobulation of hair twists and twirls and pin curls. I never understand it. It very much gave me Edward Scissorhands. Y'all remember when Edward Scissorhands, when they when they had found him in that town, they got him to work in that hairdresser, and the women was coming in to get them haircuts. I just feel like whoever is doing these updos with Jessica is just, they're just doing anything and just sort of throwing it to the side and then saying magic. Again, we are sitting on these dingy couches, and when I tell you, I know the couches are dark, y'all, but they just don't go with the gels in the background and the lights. They don't go with this IKEA light furniture. Who is styling this set? It's giving blind man. And what I don't understand about it is these couches look similar to the couches that they have from the previous season. Is this just staging furniture that Ready to Love is using? And if they are, can they please clean these couches? Because something gives me dirty bench. It's something about that situation. All I wanted to say throughout this entire segment is what Mariah said when they was at Heavenly House or Married to Medicine, pressure wash these motherfuckers. But anyway, I digress. Tommy proceeds to go over the not romantic relationship of Marie and Jessica and their entire time throughout the season. And when I tell you, it was just an interesting array of things to see. He then proceeds to ask Jessica whether or not, she feels like she enjoyed the process and enjoyed getting to know Maria, and she says yes. He then asked her, she said I had started off with a bunch of different connections, but ultimately after a while it just was me and Maria, especially by the cabin time. Now we know, Chris has been out in these streets being sassy, honey. And so he's been on multiple interviews and said that, he was done with Jessica because that was really her other strong connection when they had the lunch or whatever. And then he was saying like when she was done, but I genuinely think that him and Jessica were both done before the cabin. And they kind of admitted that when they had that after date where Chris went off, that they were pretty much done at that point, and that that production kept putting them back together. So I do think it was really Maria in terms of final choicing by the time that they got to the cabin. She wasn't giving Chris no real attention and time, and he wasn't giving her the same. So I thought it was weird that Chris kind of looked in the background like he was like, oh, like she still wanted me, because I don't think she was into him. The way he spoke to her, the way he spoke to him, it wasn't going to happen. But she does say that Marie was different and that their conversation, something that they were very consistent on throughout the entire season, really worked for them and they got to know each other. And I genuinely think a friendship was built here that could possibly lead to something, but are they currently dating now? We don't believe it. And so Tommy proceeds to ask her the weirdest question, and he says, what made him separate himself? Because she said that Marie was, there were things that made Marie separate from the rest of the men that made him her choice. But Tommy phrased that so incorrectly that honestly, Jessica was doing the same thing that we would do in a job interview when somebody think that they're giving you a smart question and it's not. So you ask them to repeat the question or say it again because the phrasing was incorrect. He kept saying what made him separate himself. Separate himself was mean that he left the situation or was away from it. What Tommy really was trying to say is what made him distinctive or different from the other men. So Jessica's confused by the question, as we all are. And then Tommy proceeds to reword the question. That way it didn't sound so weird. I think he actually caught himself, and I'm glad he repeated it because it made no sense to begin with. He then proceeds to remind us that, Marie gave everybody a chance. Marie dated everybody, and Jessica ended up being his person. We know that they are clearly just friends because don't nobody believe that they are dating. When I tell you the body language is giving, we are so far apart, but we are still together. But let's delve into it for a minute. Let's say that these two really were in a situation, because what I can tell is that Marie genuinely enjoys her, and he looked at her with so much admiration specifically. And even in the moment where they were showing their relationship back and forth, these two really in alternative universe world would make a really good couple. I've talked about this in my other reviews. Alternative world, Bizarro world, Marie and Jessica would absolutely be a power couple. Marie would clearly be either somebody's pastor at Third Regional Baptist, honey, up the street. Jessica would be the first lady sitting in them pews in them St. John suit, giving it to the girls every week because the girl can dress. Even if this wasn't the situation, they could have an alternative as like a, I don't know, just like a local based Barack and Michelle. It was very much given cute power couple. Mario out here leading the people through his councilman job, and Jessica making sure that y'all get them votes out, honey. When I tell you everything about them is super cute, if they weren't, just not fitting. Because I think the friendship that they grew was very, very beautiful to see how they worked through things, how they talked to each other. They seemed to talk every single day, and they had a lot in common. And he genuinely enjoyed her company. And I think that's sometimes under rated in relationships nowadays. People keep trying to make it seem like it only has to be romantic. You really do need to be friends with people, because when you are not, there are plenty of people I know who had all the chemistry who are divorced because they did not like their spouse at the end of the day. They didn't want to hang with them. They didn't want to go with them to the movies on Sunday. Anything that was past romantic hanging out or obligational things that they would do as a couple, they didn't do. And they really didn't want to hang with them when it was time to just like relax. When you think about hanging out with your friends, your spouse should feel that way to you. And if it just feels like it's only romantic, y'all only doing things for likes and pics and to be seen as a romantic couple or running through the flows of marriage, but you genuinely don't mess with your husband, he ain't the one. Child, Habibi, this segment was another reason that, again, this season had been trash, and why we really need to fire the people that recruit for Ready to Love on the internet. It just was the worst to see this man in, I guess, another sense. He had a time to reinvent himself and maybe explain away some of his weirdo behavior. And instead, we got, low-key fuckboy vibes and a whack Kenny G segment at the end. What was that with the saxophone? Like, whose idea was that? Who's doing this? Who's recommending that we get songs during reunions between Drew and Real Housewives of Atlanta? If you haven't seen my Real Housewives of Atlanta review, please go back and check it out. I'll leave it in the description box below. But what is going on with this situation with these musical numbers? We are not asking people to do this. Respectfully own, if you are listening, nobody is asking for these sing song segments. We are literally here to get a breakdown of the show, find out who people are, and that is it. Nobody was looking for Habibi to get up here and play that saxophone for the world. We just weren't interested. They really aren't interested here, which is why normally he has to go overseas. All I want to say in this segment is that Sierra was given the energy that we all felt, y'all. It was just painful to watch this man speak and try to attempt to articulate himself. It was disturbing to see how slow and lack of depth that he really had, his lack of emotional maturity, mental maturity. But I also want to say that I was super disturbed by the background. The amount of people that were laughing in the room when he was doing stuff. And although he couldn't see them, it's what made me so pissed off with this segment and how he interacted. Because people like Habibi and men that are this grown like him who have not matured, it's because they do clownery, but they have the peanut gallery laughing. And so they think it's funny. They think they're funny and they continue this ridiculous behavior. He's just too grown for this. I can't believe he has a kid. But all that laughter is what helps to proceed with this. And I was disappointed in a lot of the men at that moment to a certain degree. I appreciate Tommy for stepping up and speaking about the whole situation that happened with Janelle and with the other women and how he was disrespectful and uncomfortable. It was wild to see him not really fully get it. And you knew that he didn't, even with that like fake apology. It just came across like he just does not connect to reality. And to have him on the show was a waste of their time, was another reason why we don't take this show serious. And it was just amazing to see that he just doubled down on his ignorance. I just didn't like what happened there. Now, y'all, you know something that really got me hot, and I'm gonna get on my candy bars for a minute. I really was pissed at the way that production allowed Habibi to follow Janelle out onto the set, especially after they just had this segment where Tommy's talking about disrespect and the fact that he made an uncomfortable, unwarranted sexual advance towards her in terms of her breast and making a comment, and he doubled down on his ignorance. And I just felt like at that moment, it just wasn't appropriate for him to follow her out. And it also spoke to how trash it was when it came to the production. I was disappointed highly in production and the way that they did not intervene when Habibi started walking past her. Their exchange had been uncomfortable, right? It happened earlier in the season, but it was an exchange that was super uncomfortable and should have never occurred. And any woman has the right to feel like, I don't want to be around this person. They're not something I want in my atmosphere once they say something like this to me. When people talk about protecting Black women, they really are talking about moments like this. Like the idea that when you casually pass this or think it's funny when somebody is following somebody and when they're like walking behind somebody and stalking somebody, that's what leads to like the acceptance of a lot of the disrespect that happens with violence against women. When we don't check these moments in their initial inference. And when we don't check these moments after the fact, he should have never even been allowed to be right behind her as she's walking away. She wasn't confronting him. She wasn't getting into situation. She was walking off of the set and going into a separate space. And there should have definitely been security between that. They had no problem getting in between that fight and other situations. So it was just disturbing to see. And, I saw maybe one or two comments. I actually saw more Black women smartly on the side of saying that this was inappropriate. But there was a few ignorant birds that was out there saying things like, well, she had an attitude. That does not negate the fact that this is not okay behavior from this man. Candy talked about it a couple of seasons back. When they were at a party, I think it was like season 8. It was the season Kim Fields was on. And, not everybody was feeling Kenya at the time, but, she was cool with one or two people. But anyway, Candy pointed out during the reunion a great point about the fact that her protection was a requirement still. Whether or not you are besties with her or enjoy her attitude or y'all can hang out on the weekends, this was not okay behavior from this man, boasting up in her face, talking to her any kind of way, calling her out her name, saying he was going to do something to her. And the fact that we saw that this situation was uncomfortable. He made an uncomfortable sexual comment to her that was disturbing. He doubled down on the disrespect, how he felt. And even when he was talking to Sierra, it was crazy. I don't understand people who even have that thought process in mind that somehow you have to earn your protection in that situation. We all pray and hope in our lives that when we're out in places, because we're precious cargo to somebody, whether or not it's you or the person that or somebody else that doesn't like you, you're precious cargo to somebody's. Everybody is somebody's everything. Shout out to Chance the Rapper. And my point remains that you would hope in your real life when you step out into different places in this world that people value you enough to, even if they don't know you, save you from a situation. For be able to say, hey, you know what? Even if I don't like you and I don't care for your attitude or I'm not feeling you or we don't vibe, this thing is horrible and we can't let this be. So even if that's the case, you would hope that. And you know how I know we do like that and we do care about that is because when we see situations where somebody steps in to help someone, when we see them being accosted or we see a situation occur, we have no problem with seeing that person, quote unquote, be a hero. We feel good about those stories because intrinsically we're drawn to the fact that we see somebody else, we see something bad or an ill happening and we cut it off right then and there. And somebody says, this is not okay. And it has to be like that for everybody, whether or not you feel like you could hang out with them and have brunch on the weekend. Now, I don't know about Marvin providing any sexual healing, but honey, he provided the relief we need after that Habibi segment. We really needed to get back into a cool, calm, collected, and fun atmosphere. And Marvin gave us that was his section. We talked about all his sexual proclivities and all the things that he's into with his eroticism. And we even saw how he didn't really connect with all the women except for Miss Unique, honey, when it came to his personal lifestyle. We found out Marvin has a girlfriend now and that she's totally into all the things that he's into. And we appreciated Marvin's authenticity about who he really was this season and what he was about. One thing you could say is whether or not you were into all of his kink, you absolutely appreciated the fact that he was clear about who he was up front and what he wanted. He then proceeded to say that although him and Unique sort of dated for a little bit, Miss Unique was feeling a little bit twisted, honey. He currently has a girlfriend. He's met his person. He thinks she's the one, and she's into all of the freaky things that she's into. And he even brought out some sex toys. It was a very fun segment, and it was something we absolutely needed to see because when I tell you Love and Hip Hop was coming up right after the show, and we did not know it was going to be that way, we absolutely needed to laugh our behinds off before this next part. Now, if there's somebody who would absolutely be TV gold for Mona Scott Young, it is Tequila, honey. It was giving me vibes of Carlos Santana. Tequila, Tequila. You remind me of a gutter snipe, baby. When I tell you it was giving gutter snipe energy, it was giving Ayanla has not gotten through to you girls after all these seasons. I was so disappointed in Tequila's behavior and the energy she brought to this situation because it was clear that she was coming here on some revenge kick that was really unnecessary, especially when it came to Phil. But more importantly, we got to talk about this outfit. Now, y'all know I'm all for creativity, but what was the thought process? I want to know what the person that was making her dress, if she didn't make it herself. I'm feeling like we're talking about a 7-year-old in an arts and crafts class, but if we're not, and we're talking about a professional dressmaker, I just want to know what was the thought, what was the vision board that was going on with this outfit? The feathers up top and the the tinsel on the bottom. I didn't know what was going on. I was giving my best Tim Gunn in this moment. I just felt like she was like, look, I'm thinking, pigeon and Christmas tree and then, make it work. It was giving a sense of utter confusion. The feathers clearly were falling all over the place. It did not make a lot of sense. I feel like she made the outfit before she got here. This would have been better just getting a Fashion Nova dress or just a quick little, online internet dress for like $30 that would have hit all the right spots. The Quilla's got a cute little shape. Um, it just did not make a lot of sense. It was just a lot going on and apparently coming off, as we saw in the background segment. I just be wondering who are the stylists sometimes that be willing to make these dresses for these people on these sets that be looking wild. I feel like even if you're trying to get into FIT, even if you're trying to get into fashion school, sometimes you got to say no to some stuff. What you make also reflects on you as a designer. And I have seen some of the top tier gown makers say, honey, I can't make that. Just for my aesthetic taste alone, I can't have my name associated with this situation. I just want to know what the creative meeting was, y'all. What was the thought process behind this dress? So back to Nephew 2.0, aka Tequila. So Tommy proceeds to talk to Tequila about her segment and how spicy she was this season. And Tequila is on the opposite couch with Habibi and Unique. And, they just got Unique out there, honey, just stressing her out underneath these lights with that plastered hair because they just keep throwing random people on the couch. And they have Phil and Janelle on the opposite couch. And they talk to Habibi and ask him, what was it about Tequila that made them connect? Habibi gives some long answer about how Tequila and him immediately, were cast together when we know damn well that wasn't the case. First of all, Tequila and Habibi didn't even connect until the mixer when she found out she was about to be eliminated. They actually both found out that they could be going home. And that made them all of a sudden link up. So they started that alliance that they had early on in the situation because they thought they could both go home. But they also are definitely both a little crazy, which is why we understand that they absolutely were a match made in heaven. And Habibi proceeds to say that Tequila's a great person. He got to know who she was, and she's one of the most balanced people there. And when I tell you, when he said balance, Phil's face is on this screen, honey. That's his face when he said balance, like, get the fuck out of here. It was like, this is not the situation. So anyway, he proceeds to then ask her about what happened between her and Phil's exchange. Phil says, when they were having the conversation, it was really cool. But then, she kind of took it there when she was upset about the whole situation. He was just being honest about his life and the fact that Tequila had asked him a question about whether or not where's like the most interesting place he had sex. And he said like the parking garage. Honey, that is tame at best. But Tequila was thrown off by that factor, and which is awkward because she's cool with Habibi and he says anything out of his mouth. So it's just shocking to me. And even when she was talking about Habibi in the segment, even Tommy said, have you seen Habibi's video? Did you see the segment with him? Did you see the segment out here? And she proceeds to say that no, they had her in a separate room, so she never saw it. And that I do believe because Janelle, along with some others on the offline interviews, have talked about how, they have you in these different rooms during the segment, so you don't see or hear everything. So some of the reactions that we're getting from people aren't authentic to what's being said. When we see them making certain faces and things like that, it's because they have them in different rooms sometimes and segmented off where they don't hear the parts of the show. So when they show their face really quick backstage, we're thinking that they're reacting to that person and they're not even looking at anything. It could be another person in the room they're talking to. It's very, very weird how they cut stuff up. But either way, he asked her, or her side of things. And so you could tell, Tequila's been, reeling up for the situation. She can't wait to drop whatever little field tea she got. And so she proceeds to say that, it's not about just the energy that he was feeling from her. It's the energy she was feeling from him. And she can't really deal with nobody that has broke energy. Now, y'all know the broke thing is a soft spot for Phil, but he's thrown out by it. And, Tommy being the mess he is goes, what do you mean by that, Tequila? He want to do a follow-up to see what's going on. And, Phil's big thing this season has been like the stability situation, or rather him being questioned about his stability because he's had a couple of different, paths in life specifically. And, it was a sense of contention between him and Aries. And ultimately the reason that she didn't choose him, per, the finale. And so he says, well, what do you mean? And she says, well, he filed bankruptcy. And so Tommy being messy again goes, bankruptcy? Tell me about it, girl. And so Phil is like thrown out by the fact that she's even bringing this up. He said, yeah, I filed bankruptcy in 07 and 08 when like the rest of the world did. because I have real estate properties and they went under. And when I tell you Tequila's energy and vibe gave Unique's energy and vibe, you always see that thing online that says like, what are these two things have in common? Or show me two pictures that mean the same thing. These segments with Tequila and Unique, where they thought they were dropping tea and about to get somebody together just to sound idiotic, was crazy. So, girl, you're upset about him, and Habibi seemed like he is broke. Giving broke energy and giving bankruptcy, but he went bankrupt he filed for bankruptcy rather at the same time that tons of corporations did, that tons of businesses did, that most people, majority of Americans lost their home or were underwater in their mortgages. Tequila, where was this going? I don't know. Clearly, her and Unique need to go to school and do better at that. They need to go to the Monique school of clearing the bitch, because this was not it in this moment. They didn't have binder energy. It very much gave a really sad interpretation of events. And ultimately, it did not land. And we were completely upset with the fact that once again, somebody tried to throw out tea that was not hot. Child, so here we head into the Thriller of Manila, or, basically Tequila and Janelle segment, and specifically the fact that Tequila and Janelle got into it in the ladies' lounge. Now, this was also giving not what Tequila wanted it to give. And don't get me wrong, Janelle gave her share of ratchet energy that helped make the situation even worse towards the back end. But in this segment, Miss Girl was giving everything that we needed in terms of the fact that I'm not going to give you the match your energy situation and it's going to make you look like a fool. So Tequila proceeds to say that the issue that she had with Janelle and essentially Jessica, who was also on the couch, but she was really, it was her and Janelle. Jessica was really an afterthought. But specifically, the fact that when they were talking in the ladies' lounge, she just felt like even though they had made this big statement, and Janelle specifically about being positive with the Black men, they were all cutting these men down when they were in the segment. And Janelle goes, well, wait a minute. It wasn't just me. We all were discussing the men and nobody was cutting them down. And I just want to say, I didn't understand this either, because the whole point of the ladies' lounge is to discuss the men. Does Tequila ever watch this show? Like, it made no sense as to why she thought that by them not agreeing on the men, that meant that they were cutting them down. They still had a positive atmosphere about the Black men that existed, and many of them got compliments. They had to go around and say who their favorites were, and they did. But they also mentioned who their non-favorites were. It really had to do with the fact that Janelle never saw it for Habibi, and Tequila was very upset about that. Because y'all remember at the mixer when Tommy sat down with the individual groups of women and he asked them how they felt about the different people, the women were questioning in like little packs with each other. And Tequila was in the pack with Janelle and I believe Unique sitting on the side about Habibi. He had asked another set of women about that situation, and several of them had said no. Even Sierra said that she wasn't sure about Habibi. Like, he seemed cool, but she had to get to know him more, but she didn't know. But then when he sat down at the mixer with Janelle, Unique, and Tequila to ask them how it was going and what men they were feeling and not feeling, and she mentioned Habibi, Unique and Janelle looked at each other like, girl, what? Like, no. And then, she said that she thought that he was a real person and real love and all of that. And, Janelle ended up describing Habibi exactly how most of us saw him this season, which is as an authentic clown, because he is and was completely with the just that had to prove it, honey. So it just did not make sense that this would have been about that or about the lounge, because ultimately many women in the lounge voted out Habibi in that segment because they said that they were not feeling him. He either approached them incorrectly. He had said F you about Sierra Mama. He had been inappropriate with every woman in some way, or just been kind of cringeworthy to where they just didn't want to deal with him. So it made no sense that she all of a sudden was pissed off. I think because Janelle was the most vocal, because she had the exchange she had with him that would have been inappropriate, that made them feel that way. But multiple women had uncomfortable situations. Girl, they just weren't for him. And that's okay. You should have just self-eliminated with your man, as you said you were going to do when y'all got hyped at that lounge. So Janelle ends up saying that she doesn't have a problem with Tequila other than that. Tequila said that there was a comment made about how she needs to take her pills. Girl, literally, although I don't try to make fun of mental health, honey, we all was low-key thinking the same thing. There needs to be some type of therapy management, some type of healing going on. I don't know what it needs to be, if it needs to be in prescription form or not, but there is something messed up going on when you are trying to fight at every possible given moment, no matter what the situation calls for. That level of tenseness just does not make any sense, sis. You have got to heal. So She says, other than that, we didn't have any issues or any drama going on with each other. And Tommy proceeds to ask Tequila if that is correct. And she says that it is. So why are we here with all of the energy? Either way, Janelle says we didn't have any issue outside of that situation, but everybody was saying the same thing. He had talked about every woman. I didn't say anything different than the situation. And Tommy says, is everything good right now? Because Lord knows we are tired of this situation and tired of the drama with these two. And Janelle says it's fine on her end. Tequila then says it's fine on her end, but you can tell she was ready to go off and probably give an unnecessary piece of information again that wasn't going to fire. And that's when we head to the back. So here we go, headed to the back, because we're thinking at this point that Tequila and Janelle have had a ceasefire, honey. They've at least come to amends that there's no real serious beef, and they head on to the back. And why the back are like an overview of a Harris casino? I don't know what was going on with the back. At best, it looked like Rosie's or something off to the side. Any given day, I would think that this was with P Valley look like a real club and not just a strip club. But either way, they're all having seats. Janelle comes in first and she proceeds to sit down. When she sits down, we sense the Tequila come in and she sits down next to Red. And when I tell you Tequila and Red's exchanges were hilarious to me, this was the funniest Red has actually been this whole season. But I digress. Back to Janelle. As she is sitting down on a stool, she's proceeding to sit down with Jessica and Sierra, and they're, I guess, about to talk whatever while they're going break. And as Janelle is sitting down, she picks off something from her chair, and it's a feather. Now, we all know Tequila's the only person that had on them that feather monstrosity this entire situation. She was the only one that was giving us full pigeon power this entire time. But the feathers apparently are falling everywhere, and they are all over the floor, because if you look at the aerial shot, there was a couple of feathers everywhere, like when they first walked in. So them feathers are not staying. Nobody bought no Elmer's glue or nothing. They are not staying on. Either way, Janelle proceeds to say, oh no, a feather. It was funny, y'all. I don't care what anybody say. And then that was enough. The powder keg was set. When I tell you Dynamite said boom, and Tequila was up on her feet, ready to get at it. Now, when I say let's get it, chicken noodle soup with a soda on the side, I am not joking, because Tequila is full ratchet mode. The activation button that Janelle pushed once she said it's a feather. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to give it a 60-40 with Janelle. I feel like 60% of her wasn't trying to be funny, because there was a feather on her chair. And she was just normally really talking to Sierra and Jessica. She wasn't really loud, but because they're all still mic'd up, because production won't let them take off the mics because they want to hear everything and catch everything, she couldn't say that lowly. There was going to be no way for her to talk really, really low once they got back there to them to talk normal because of that. But the other 40% of me just felt like she was full petty mode. And I don't know what, but that was enough to set Tequila off. And she's like, sure is. Sure is. Y'all, I was cracking up. But when I say Red was on a past the Cavassier moment, when I tell you Red was lit, the amount of alcohol they left back here for them, they shouldn't have. Kira, Red, and I want to say possibly Phil. When I tell you it was everybody in the club getting tipsy. And when Tequila said that and Red picked up his cup and was laughing in his eyes. When I tell you, this is the funniest this man has been all season. His visual eyes alone could have been an interpreter for this segment. But Tequila is like, sure is my feathers. And they start getting into a back and forth. And so Janelle goes, Tequila, do you want to fight me? And when I tell you, Quentin rushed over there and they're standing in the middle of the floor, and Chris jumped up because him and Unique was talking on the side, and they both started looking, and then all of a sudden Quentin's eyes go, what? Because Tequila jumps up, and then Janelle jumps up too, like, oh, let's get it. So when I tell you the birds were in full bloom, you got Janelle on one side, and she got her full plumage out with that hair. You got Tequila and feathers everywhere. Honey, it was full on back and forth magic. So you got Tequila getting upset and saying, well, you ready to start? That's what I knew you was here, but I knew you was here for. And Janelle's like, let's get it. So she's like, I got something for you. She said, did you bring what you said you had for me? Honey, when I tell you, the comebacks from Janelle were making me laugh, but they were both ratchet energy. It was absolutely ridiculous. It quickly turned into Love and Hip Hop Miami, Atlanta, LA, whatever. It was complete baddies energy going on from both of them, and it looked ridiculous. So it really just made it, well, I have to say, some of the segments was boring, so maybe this fight was worth it. But either way, it was still kind of sad to see. And they're getting into a back and forth mode. People have backed up, honey. Chris had turned himself around and went over to the table. And they're going back and forth. For security's trying to come. And she's like, "Do you want to fight me, Tequila? Let's go, let's go." But when I tell you, nobody was backing down for nobody. Nobody seemed afraid to me at all. I didn't know how this would turn out if they actually fought. Who y'all think would win? I don't actually know because honestly, I feel like people always underestimate women who they think are maybe a little bit more conservative or quiet, or they think that not is hype. They always think that the person that's the loudest is going to throw their hands the best. And it honestly don't work like that. If you've actually ever been in a real fight in any capacity, either in your youth or anything like that, or even if you've seen people in fights recently, I, just not that long ago, saw a disagreement that happened at an event that it shouldn't have happened. It happened at brunch in Atlanta. That's why you can't go to Atlanta. It's ghetto. So it really do be. The brunch spots in Atlanta, we got to do better, Black people. But these girls got into it, and the one girl did not seem like she would be the type to fight visually. You know what I'm saying? Like from the perspective. But she ended up getting the girl that did seem like she would be the fighter. So you can't always assume that Janelle was going to get her ass beat, and you can't assume that Tequila was going to get ass beat. At anything, I feel like they were just going to end up tussling on the floor, and there'd be feathers and beads flying everywhere, honey, and sliding across that floor. So either way, they kind of getting into it. They start to separate. People trying to move them out. They didn't move the couches out the way, child. We think we getting a WWE special, and no. Tequila goes over to the table, and she goes ahead and pulls the Cardi ready and throws the table down. She pulled an Erica Mena real quick on it. And when I tell you Chris took his drink off that table so quickly, like, you're not about to take this down because I just poured this. So it was hilarious to see them go at it because at this point, the finale was boring. The show season was boring. We honestly deserved this fight, even though it was ratchet. We just wanted to see it go down and see what was going to occur. Of course, it was all smoke, and from both ends, to be honest with you. And it left us off in what's going to happen next week. I was ready to see the full plumage play out, but we did not. Nobody's feathers flew. Nobody really did anything to either person. It was just all hot spoken talk. Y'all let me know what y'all thought about this reunion, and I will catch you for part 2, and it better be the only other part that we have to this show. Now, y'all know by now, my favorite part of this is hearing and talking and listening to y'all. So don't forget to drop a comment below. Let me know what you think of the video, and let me know what you think of the episode.